Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Believe it or not, it's really not been that long ago since gold and silver circulated as money here in the United States of America. And one can make the argument that that is really what saved America. But nonetheless, there is something about gold and silver that really brought the United States to the forefront. And we're going to talk about that and how gold and silver saved the United States and how they could do it again. So let's explore. I'm going to be referencing an article here from Numismatic News from Patrick Heller that talks about a little bit of history behind gold and silver in the United States and how it saved the country. On October the 19th, 1781, it was that marked the battle, the surrender of Yorktown, Virginia. And this year is the 241st anniversary of that surrender. The final major battle of the American Revolutionary War. The American victory led to the Treaty of Paris, where the British government recognized the independence of the United States of America. In fact, a little tidbit, when I toured the battlefield a while ago, I was told a story by one of the guides there of how the first shot in that war came from a cannon that was lit by George Washington himself. And the cannonball went through a window and struck a soldier sitting at a table there and decapitated him. Kind of an interesting story, but nonetheless, that is how it began. The beginning of the end was that first shot. But if it hadn't been for the arrival of physical gold and silver to pay George Washington's troops, the British might instead have vanquished the Revolution barely 5 years after the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. Now, that is definitely one way how gold and silver saved the United States. Over the course of the war, George Washington's troops lost more battles than they had won. The first joint campaign by Colonel and French colonial and French forces in attacking Newport, Rhode Island in August of 1778 failed. British forces had successfully captured Charleston, South Carolina in the spring of 1780. The British were largely stationed in coastal cities, with ready access to by sea to reinforcements. So meanwhile, the revolution was floundering. A significant percentage of the colonists were sympathetic to remaining British citizens. Also, because of high inflation of the paper money issued by the Continental Congress, continental currency had effectively lost more than 99.8% of its purchasing power against gold and silver. Think about that, and think about where we are at today. 99.8% of its purchasing power against gold and silver. Now, that was the Continental Congress. Look at where the dollar is today. The dollar has lost over 98% of its value since 1913. They've managed to keep it afloat that long, and it still has decreased less in value for a much longer period of time. But still, the result is the same. The slow road or the fast road. And of course, funding a war is not easy. And continental currency had its problems because there was a lot of counterfeiting going on by the British. The official exchange rate of continental currency in 1781 was that it took 175 continental dollars to obtain a silver Spanish mill dollar, also popularly known as 8 reals or pieces of 8. But in everyday commerce, it took 525 continental dollars to be worth the Spanish silver coin. So that is to show the reality versus the official exchange rate. Boy, don't we see that happening today with the paper silver markets. Even worse, Washington's troops hadn't been paid for months. There were rampant rumors that the troops might melt away or go home. Washington begged Robert Morris, whose personal credit was stronger than that of the Continental Congress, to procure 1 month's pay in gold or silver for the troops. Morris was unable to directly meet the request. Admiral Francis Joseph Paul de Grasse, commanding the Allied French fleet blockading the Chesapeake Bay, knew of Washington's predicament. Some of his ships visited Havana, Cuba to secure Spanish gold and silver, mostly from Mexican mines, to deliver to Washington. The Spanish government's gold and silver had not yet arrived in Havana, but private citizens there contributed 500,000 pesos in silver and some gold that was transported to Virginia. The delivery of gold and silver allowed Washington to pay and keep its troops on duty. Gold and silver. You know what? That's what really talks. That's the money that talks. It's not so much the greenbacks or any kind of paper currency. No, it's real silver and gold that do the trick, for sure. Lord Cornwallis's British and Hessian troops were surrounded and heavily outnumbered because of French naval blockade that was there. They were unable to escape by sea. On October the 19th, 1781, more than 7,000 troops under Cornwallis' command surrendered. With news of Cornwallis's defeat reached London on November the 25th of that same year, British Prime Minister Lord Frederick North declared, "Oh God, it's all over. It's all over." On March the 5th, 1782, the British Parliament authorized the government to make peace with America. Lord North resigned as Prime Minister on March the 20th, 1782. The Treaty of Paris, where the British formally recognized American independence, was signed on September the 3rd, 1783. Yes, indeed. So it took almost, longer than a year before that declaration was made, before that treaty was signed. Without General George Washington obtaining the physical gold and silver at a critical time, there might not be a United States of America today. Will gold and silver once again be needed to save America from the disaster of inflation of the money supply? That is the question of the day. That is the question of the decade. And that is the question, really, of the century. I tell you what, it is something, what's going on today, how we are being, really, there's a war waging against us with the money supply these days. We work hard for the money that we earned for this currency and dollars. And the thing is what's clear is though this dollar here is money, because it is a store of value and it contains all of the other aspects of money. It is a store of value because the government has decreed it as such, as a fiat currency. That means something. However, with that being said, it is unsound money. In other words, by design, by this institution here, the Federal Reserve, they are decreasing the value of it by design every year by 2%. That's their target. That's still inflation, folks. It's just managed inflation. Right now, the inflation rate is almost 8% per year, year over year. And so it is out of control inflation now. If they're not careful, it could very easily turn into hyperinflation or stagflation. There's an economic war against all of us with that unsound money in the form of these notes. This is why we hold sound money in the form of silver and gold. And for most of America's history, it transacted as money. And that alone kind of saved America throughout the course of its existence until Franklin Delano Roosevelt took us off the gold standard and confiscated gold. And then Richard Nixon put the death nail into the gold standard completely after the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. Nonetheless, you can't stop gold and you can't stop silver. In fact, silver continued to circulate, and by far it circulated much more commonly than gold did throughout the history of this country. And before there was a United States Mint established on April the 2nd, 1792, and before the first silver coin was produced in 1794. And nonetheless, gold and silver circulate, and they had for all of these years until 1969, when the last vestiges of silver left our currency in the form of the 40% half dollar. But nonetheless, Could gold and silver save America again with all that's going on? Yes, they could. But it's going to take discipline on the form of the powers that be. Do they have that discipline? No, they don't have it now, that's for sure. They want the power to spend. They want the power to tax with the mere printing of more money, more of these Federal Reserve notes that circulate amongst us that we need for goods and services today. But as you're looking here before you, you can see here a Walking Liberty $50. This design here was the foundation for the American Eagle Silver Eagle program. That was the obverse, and this is the original design for the $50. And it circulated. In this example, you can see it's slightly worn, but nonetheless, you see these that are heavily worn, you know that they were circulating and they were used as money. It's neat to see those, and I have several of those as well. This is a St. Gaudens Gold Eagle, Gold Double Eagle rather, and it is the foundation for the design of the obverse of the modern American Eagle Gold Bullion program. And it is a design that is considered one of the most beautiful in the world for gold coins or any coins. And nonetheless, this coin did not circulate as much, which is why you can find many of these in uncirculated condition. But nonetheless, they are beautiful coins and command a premium as pre-1933 gold. And some of the smaller denominations of the gold coins did circulate, and these mainly circulated between banks and institutions. But nonetheless, Americans could own these up until 1933. But gold and silver now are at a crossroads. You know, many are seeing that gold and silver are not reacting as they think it should towards inflation. And but sooner or later, they will catch up to it. And for all intents and purposes, if you look at it through a long enough chart, they really have, especially gold. Silver will get there in due course, but since we stopped minting silver coins in the United States, the uses of silver have expanded dramatically, exponentially even. It has so many wide uses in industry, in science and technology, and in the biomedical field that it's really seen as a commodity more so than as a monetary metal. But nonetheless, a monetary metal remains to be, and as a store of wealth, as an asset to preserve your wealth over the course of a long period of time. Gold is a metal that certainly has been a more stable store of value, and how gold especially could save America is the mere fact that over 8,100 tons remains in the vaults of the United States, the Federal Reserve in New York and in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Now, some don't believe that the gold is there, but then again, some don't believe that China has as much gold as they have either. There's a lot of questions about the gold that's there, but we claim we have it. And why is that? Because even the Federal Reserve, whether you believe the gold is there or not, and they say they have it, and which means that they must value gold, even if they think it's not there, which means that if they think that the gold is valuable, then we should as well, and silver by association. So therefore, it could come to a point in time, if worst comes to worst, we as Americans and our government and the Federal Reserve has more gold than any other nation on earth by a long shot. So therefore, that could save America. Now, that's fine and dandy, but you holding gold and silver, these metals can save you from financial calamity by holding them as well. And that's really the most important thing, because America was found on the ideal that all men and women are created equal, and that all men and women have a destiny, a rendezvous with destiny, if you will, to quote Ronald Reagan. And that destiny is that we have individual freedom and liberty. We have individual responsibility as well. And that responsibility is to hold gold and silver in our portfolio and in physical form to avoid counterparty risk. So there you have it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.